My name is Daniel Rowe. I am 41 years old, and the first time my stepmother charged a personal expense to my business account, it was $11.43. A bottle of wine from a gas station in Cedar Falls, Iowa, dated March 14, 2016. That was 9 years ago. By the time I stopped counting, the running total had reached $87,412. I remember the exact figure because I printed it on a single sheet of paper the night everything ended. White cardstock, black ink, centered on the page like a headstone inscription, and I still have that page in my desk drawer right now, underneath a stack of actuarial tables I no longer need for work. She rang it up like it was nothing. Like the account number was community property. When the charge appeared on my monthly reconciliation, I reconcile my accounts on the first Saturday of every month, always have. I called my father about it. His voice carried that particular blend of exhaustion and preemptive apology he reserves for anything involving Linda. He said, "She probably just grabbed the wrong card. Don't make it a thing, Danny. $11.43. I let it go. I noted it in a personal spreadsheet I'd started that same year for tracking deductible business expenses, a single line item flagged in yellow. I held the phone against my ear, so still that the screen dimmed to black. My hand wasn't shaking. My hand was perfectly motionless. Something inside me was already running numbers, not the $11, but the probability architecture, the likelihood that this was the first occurrence versus the first detection. In my profession, those are never the same number. I'm a catastrophe pricing actuary. I build mathematical models that predict how likely a structure is to fail, how much it will cost when it does, and how long the people inside it will continue trusting the foundation after the cracks have already started spreading beneath the load-bearing walls. I work with reinsurance syndicates, Lloyd's of London, Hamilton Re in Bermuda, a specialty carrier in Zurich. I assess compound risk, the kind where 17 individually survivable failures stack invisibly inside a system until one unremarkable Tuesday morning the entire thing liquefies, and the people standing in the wreckage say they never saw it coming. They always say that. The data always shows they could have. That skill had priced billion-dollar tower collapses, wildfire corridors across 3 western states, and a municipal dam failure that displaced 9,000 families. It was about to price my own family. I kept records of all of it, not because I planned to use them, not because I suspected this would end in a county attorney's office, because that's what I do. I track things. I quantify, I assign values and timestamps and probability weights to events other people experience as feelings. Before I take you through what those records show, tell me, what time is it where you are? Because I remember the time of every single incident on this list, not the approximate season, not the general year, the time, the weekday, the account balance before and after. In catastrophe modeling, the timestamp is the thing that proves sequence, and sequence is what separates an accident from a pattern. Let me go further back. My father married Linda Eklund in August of 2007. I was 19, about to begin my second year of actuarial science at Drake University. Linda came with 2 sons from her previous marriage, Garrett, 14, sullen, already broad-shouldered and aware of it, and Kyle, 11, quiet, mostly invisible behind his older brother's noise. My mother had died 2 years prior, pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in April, gone by September. The speed of it left my father hollowed, not the dramatic, visible kind of grief that invites community support, but the quiet, structural failure, the kind where the person keeps showing up to work and mowing the lawn, but something behind their eyes has shifted permanently off its foundation. Linda filled that void with remarkable efficiency. Within 6 months, she had reorganized his kitchen, consolidated his bills into a single filing system only she understood, and begun referring to his house as our home in conversation with neighbors who had known my mother. Within 18 months, she had added her name to the house deed. My father mentioned this to me over the phone as though it were a minor administrative matter, just easier for estate purposes, Danny. I didn't object. I was living on financial aid and $3 frozen pizzas, studying for my first actuarial exam, and genuinely grateful someone was taking care of him. I told myself this was what healing looked like. I told myself Linda was a solution. The family system that developed over the next decade operated on a single unspoken principle that I did not name until much later. Resources flowed inward toward Linda's household, and obligations flowed outward toward me. The mechanism was never dramatic. It was never a demand. It was a series of conversations, always initiated by my father, always scripted by Linda, in which a need was presented with just enough emotional context to make refusal feel like cruelty. When Garrett needed braces in 2011, my father asked if I could help. $2,200. Your brother's in real pain, Danny, he said, though Garrett had never been my brother in any way that word carries meaning. When Kyle wanted to attend a hockey camp in Minnesota, my father mentioned it at Thanksgiving dinner, the way you mentioned the weather forecast, and Linda said, "Daniel's doing so well now, aren't you, Daniel?" As though my salary were communal property that simply hadn't been properly distributed yet. I wrote the check. $450. When they needed a new furnace. February, sub-zero wind chill, my father's voice on the phone at 10 p.m., carrying that particular embarrassment that made me feel guilty for having the money they needed. I transferred $6,000 the next morning without asking questions. When I offered to help him find a contractor, Linda's voice came from somewhere close to the phone. "We've already handled all of that, sweetheart. Just the money part was needed." The first time it genuinely wounded me was 2019. I had been promoted to senior pricing analyst at my firm. I'd spent 2 years saving for a down payment on a house, a small craftsman bungalow in the Sherman Hill neighborhood of Des Moines, with original quarter-sawn oak millwork, a covered front porch with tapered columns, and a backyard maple tree I could see from the street. The asking price required $42,000 liquid. I had $44,300. Tight, but possible. Then my father called on a Sunday evening in March. Garrett was starting a landscaping business. He had a business plan. He needed startup capital. $28,000. My father said, "He's your brother, Daniel. And he's really trying this time." I sat at my kitchen table for a very long time that night. The laptop was open in front of me. The real estate listing for the Sherman Hill house was still on the screen. The maple tree in full summer canopy in the listing photo. The porch light on, the windows warm. I closed the tab. I opened my banking app. I sent the money. That brought the running total. Wine, braces, hockey, furnace, and now this, to $37,943. And we were only in 2019. The irony is that I spent every working day calculating the exact mathematical point at which accumulated small losses trigger catastrophic system failure. I had technical charts for it. I had industry terminology, frequency-severity modeling, loss development triangles. The textbook name for what was happening to me was attritional creep. Losses so individually minor, they never breach the reporting threshold, but so persistent in their recurrence that they eventually hollow out the entire reserve until the structure cannot withstand even one additional ordinary event. I was living inside my own pricing model and refusing to run the numbers on myself. I could see it in strangers' portfolios across 3 continents. I could not see it at my own kitchen table. The landscaping business failed within 8 months. Garrett bought a $32,000 truck with the capital, a white Ford F-250 with chrome running boards, a custom aluminum toolbox bolted to the bed, and a dealer sticker still visible on the rear window 6 months later. He completed approximately 4 residential jobs before deciding the physical labor was beneath him. The truck sat in Linda's driveway for the next 2 years, appreciating nothing, depreciating steadily. No one mentioned my $28,000, not once, not at Thanksgiving, not at Christmas, not on the single Sunday I drove past the house and saw Garrett washing the truck with a garden hose, shirtless, unhurried, using water my father paid for to clean a vehicle my money had purchased. I noticed the factory sticker still on the toolbox. It never peeled. It never weathered. Because the toolbox was never used. After that, the requests became approximately biannual. Kyle's community college tuition, $4,200. Linda's dental surgery, not covered by insurance, my father said, $7,800. Garrett's apartment security deposit, when he finally moved out of the house, $2,200. A family vacation to Branson, Missouri, that I was invited to attend but also asked to fund, $3,600 for the rental lake house, 4 bedrooms, hot tub, pontoon boat rental, all of it billed to me. I went. I sat on the deck and drank coffee at 7 in the morning while Linda's sons slept until noon, and I told myself this was what family felt like when you were the one holding it together. That brought the running total to $53,743, and we were only in 2021. The request that shattered the sequence came 14 months ago, a Tuesday. I remember because my weekly risk committee call with the London syndicate had just ended, and I was still at my desk with the headset draped around my neck, my screen showing a loss model I'd been building for a client in coastal Florida. My father's name appeared on my phone at 4:17 p.m. He didn't say hello, he didn't ask how I was. He said, "Linda needs surgery again, it's her knee this time. The out-of-pocket after insurance is $19,000. Can you have it transferred by Friday?" $19,000. By Friday. No paperwork, no medical estimate, no explanation of insurance coordination. No "how are you, son?" I pulled up my personal balance sheet, something I maintain monthly, professionally formatted with color-coded thresholds, because that is how my brain organizes survival. If I sent $19,000, my emergency reserve would drop below what I had calculated as my personal ruin boundary. The number beneath which a single adverse event, job loss, medical emergency, car failure, would cascade into insolvency within 90 days. I said, "I need to see the surgical estimate and the insurance explanation of benefits before I can send anything." Silence. 6 seconds of it. Then Linda's voice, closer to the phone now, as though she had been standing beside my father the entire time, as though this call had always been a performance for two. "Daniel, she's in pain. This isn't a business transaction." I said nothing. I heard my father's breathing. Then Linda again, her voice carrying that particular tone, not angry, not pleading, but proprietary, as though my money were a household appliance she'd been denied access to. "After everything this family has done for you." I stood in my home office holding the phone, and I did not move. The furnace cycled in my basement, the furnace I paid for, in my apartment, with my money, that no one else had contributed to or would ever ask about. My hand was so still around the phone that my knuckles blanched white. Something inside me became very quiet. Not calm. Quiet. The way a catastrophe model goes quiet when you've entered all the variables and pressed calculate, and the processing bar is loading, and you know, before the number appears, that the output will be larger than anyone in the room expects. I was not upset. I was loading. I said, "Send me the documents." Linda hung up without responding. The documents arrived 2 days later, a single PDF attachment in an email from my father's address, with no message in the body. An invoice from Heartland Orthopedic Associates in Cedar Rapids, showing a total patient responsibility of $19,211.40 for a left total knee arthroplasty. Linda's name. A date of service 3 weeks out. Procedure code, diagnosis code, surgeon name, facility fee, anesthesia fee. Comprehensive, professional looking, almost correct. I looked at it the way I look at every document that crosses my desk, not at the content first, at the structure, the template formatting, the font, the spacing between line items, the alignment of the dollar signs. This invoice used Calibri 11 point, where every surgical estimate I had ever received, through my own insurance, through my firm's benefits coordinator, through 12 years of processing medical claims against catastrophe policies, used Arial or Times New Roman. The kerning on the dollar amounts was slightly loose. The facility's tax ID number was present, but formatted with a dash in the wrong position. XXXXXXXXXXXXX instead of the standard XXXXXXX format for employer identification numbers. I called Heartland Orthopedic Associates directly. I asked to verify a patient estimate for Linda Rowe, date of birth provided. The intake coordinator put me on hold. The hold music was a piano arrangement of something unidentifiable. 4 minutes. She returned and said, "Sir, we don't have a patient by that name in our scheduling system. Would you like to spell it differently?" I spelled it 3 ways. Nothing. My throat went dry. I thanked her. I disconnected. I sat perfectly still for what must have been 5 minutes. I opened the PDF properties on my laptop. Author field G. Rowe. File created 11 days before the stated surgery date. Modified twice. Most recently 2 days before it was sent to me. G. Rowe. Garrett Rowe. My stepbrother had built this invoice on his personal computer. That was layer 1, the obvious insult. A fabricated medical bill designed to extract $19,000 from me, using my father's voice as the delivery vehicle, and Linda's health as the emotional packaging. But I'm a catastrophe modeler. I don't stop at the reported loss. I calculate the tail risk, the probability that this event is not isolated, but rather the visible surface of a distribution that extends much further than anyone has measured. I went back. I opened every PDF my family had ever sent me attached to a financial request. I had them all, saved in a folder on my personal drive labeled Family Transfers, with subfolders by year. The hockey camp brochure from 2017, the furnace replacement estimate from 2018, the landscaping business plan from 2019, the dental surgery invoice from 2021, the vacation rental confirmation from that same year. I opened file properties on every single document. 3 of the 6 had G. Rowe in the author metadata field. 3, the hockey camp brochure, the dental surgery invoice, and now the knee replacement estimate. Each created on the same machine, each sent to me within 72 hours of a phone call from my father. The running total of confirmed fabricated requests: the hockey camp, $450, the dental surgery, $7,800, the knee replacement, $19,211, $31,443 in verified manufactured documents. And that was only counting the ones with surviving metadata. I spent the next 3 weeks pulling records. I called the dental practice listed on the 2021 invoice. They confirmed Linda had been a patient. She'd had a crown replaced, a 40-minute procedure, fully covered by her insurance plan, with 0 patient responsibility. The $7,800 I'd sent was for a surgery that cost my family nothing. I pulled my bank statements across 9 years and built a comprehensive spreadsheet: date, amount, stated reason, document provided, verification status, metadata author where available. 17 separate transfers over 9 years. 11 of the 17 were unverifiable through independent confirmation. Not all fabricated. Some appeared to be legitimate expenses, inflated by 30 to 40% above actual cost. The furnace had cost $4,112. I found the contractor's invoice through the county building permit records. It's public information in Polk County. They'd charged me an extra $1,900 above the actual price. That was layer 2, the hidden setup. This was not impulsive greed. It was systematic extraction. Garrett manufactured the documentation, Linda scripted the emotional pressure and controlled the timing, and my father was the delivery mechanism, his voice, his relationship to me, his quiet shame leveraged as the tool that bypassed my defenses every single time. A coordinated operation running for nearly a decade, with defined roles and escalating confidence. Layer 3 arrived when I called my Uncle Richard, my father's older brother, retired county engineer, living alone in a ranch house in Omaha since his wife passed in 2014. I asked him a question I had never thought to ask in 30 years of being part of this family. Had anyone else ever been asked to help my father financially in the years after my mother's death? Richard was silent for a very long time. I could hear his television in the background, a baseball game, crowd noise rising and falling. Then he said, very quietly, "Before you, Danny, it was me. For about 6 years after your mother died, Linda had a reason every few months. I stopped in 2013 when I drove past the house and noticed the roof that I'd supposedly paid $12,000 to repair still had the same missing shingles I'd photographed 2 years earlier. He'd lost approximately $40,000. Same mechanism, same manufactured urgency, same emotional delivery system. Different decade, different target. That brought the confirmed pattern. Not merely my losses, but the system's full operational history, to a verified minimum of $127,000 extracted across 15 years from 2 family members using fabricated or inflated documentation and emotional manipulation. And we were only counting what could be independently verified. Layer 4 came from Garrett's own financial records, accessed legally through a civil discovery motion I filed after reporting the fabricated knee surgery invoice to the Lynn County Attorney's Office. The discovery revealed something I had not anticipated. Garrett had not been spending the extracted funds, he had been investing them. A Charles Schwab brokerage account opened in 2018, the same year the metadata showed him creating his first fabricated document, held $94,317 in accumulated value. Index funds, blue chip stocks, a disciplined monthly contribution pattern. He had been building a personal investment portfolio, using money stolen from me and my uncle through manufactured documents, while my own savings remained perpetually depleted by the next request. The running total wasn't vanishing into crises. It was compounding quietly in a brokerage account under his name while I closed browser tabs on houses I couldn't afford. The confrontation happened at my father's house, the house with Linda's name on the deed, the house with the furnace I'd paid for, the house where Sunday dinners happened at a walnut dining table my father had bought with a bonus the year my mother was diagnosed. Linda had organized a gathering for my father's 68th birthday, mid-October. The house smelled like pot roast and rosemary. The table was set with cloth napkins, burgundy folded into triangles, and a floral centerpiece Linda had ordered from a shop on Ingersoll Avenue. Everyone was there, my father at the head of the table, Linda to his right, Garrett beside her, leaning back in his chair with his ankle crossed over his knee, wearing a watch I didn't recognize, Kyle at the far end, quiet, scrolling his phone beneath the table. I arrived with a manila folder. 9 pages inside. I waited until after the cake, German chocolate, my father's favorite, and the singing, and the candles extinguished, and the first coffee poured. Then I placed my palms flat on the table and said, I need to show everyone something before we finish tonight. I opened the folder. I placed the documents in sequence, left to right, the way I arrange evidence exhibits for client presentations, the PDF metadata reports, the verification calls documented with dates and representative names, the spreadsheet, the dental office confirmation letter, the Heartland orthopedic phone record, and at the far right, a single printed page showing Garrett's brokerage account balance, obtained through court-authorized discovery, date-stamped, highlighted in yellow. Linda looked at the papers without touching them. She said, "What is all this, Daniel?" Her voice carried no alarm, only the mild irritation of a hostess whose dinner party has been interrupted by an administrative matter. Garrett leaned forward, looked at the brokerage printout, and his face went still for exactly 2 seconds before he said, "You went through my private financial records? That's illegal. That's a violation of my rights," my father said. "Danny, not tonight. It's my birthday." His voice was not angry. It was tired. The same tired it had been for 20 years. I placed the dental invoice beside the dental office's written confirmation, side by side. I said, this procedure was fully covered by Linda's insurance. Patient responsibility was 0. You charged me $7,800 for a bill that didn't exist. I placed the knee surgery estimate beside the metadata printout. This document was created on Garrett's computer. The surgical center has never heard of Linda. Linda straightened in her chair. Her hands came together on the table, fingers interlaced, the way I'd seen her compose herself 100 times before delivering a sentence she'd already rehearsed. You're twisting things completely out of context. Those technical reports could mean anything. You've always been like this, Daniel. Cold, suspicious, more comfortable with numbers than with people. This is why you're alone. She turned to my father. Tell him he's being paranoid. Tell him to put those papers away. My father looked at the table. At the document spread across it like an autopsy. He did not speak. Garrett stood up. His chair scraped against the hardwood. I helped with some paperwork over the years. That's not a crime. You're trying to criminalize normal family stuff because you've always resented that Mom and I became part of this family. You've never accepted us. I placed Uncle Richard's notarized statement on the table. 4 pages, handwritten account of 6 years of identical extraction, verified amounts, dates, the roof that was never repaired. I said nothing. I let the document speak. Linda's face changed. Not dramatically. A small contraction around the eyes, a tightening of the lips that someone who hadn't spent a decade watching her perform would never have registered. She said, Richard has always been jealous of your father's life. He'd say anything to cause problems in this family. Then the front door opened. No knock. The sound of a key turning. My father's spare, the one that hung on a hook in the garage. Uncle Richard stepped into the hallway. 6'3", gray flannel jacket, retired county engineer, holding his own manila folder, thicker than mine. He had driven 4 hours from Omaha without telling anyone he was coming. He stood in the dining room doorway and looked at Linda with an expression I can only describe as architectural, the way an engineer looks at a beam that has been carrying false load for years and is about to be removed. He said, I kept everything too, Linda. Every single receipt. The room went completely silent. The refrigerator hummed. The furnace, my furnace, the one I'd overpaid for, cycled on in the basement. Linda stared at Richard. Then she turned to my father and said very quietly, with a control that was almost admirable, Make them leave, both of them. This is your house and your birthday, and they are ruining it. My father didn't move. He was looking at the brokerage statement. His index finger rested on the highlighted number. $94,317. In his stepson's name, built from money taken from his own son and his own brother through documents his stepson manufactured. I said one sentence, quietly, without moving forward, without raising my voice, without looking at Linda or Garrett. I looked at my father and I said, You didn't need help. You needed a source. And you let them use your voice to collect. Then I stopped talking. I stood still, and I let the silence hold the weight. My father's hands stayed flat on the table for a long time. Then he said, How long has this been happening? He was not looking at me. He was looking at Linda. His voice carried something I had never heard in it before. Not anger, not grief, but the sound of a man who has just realized the foundation he's been standing on is hollow. Linda did not answer. The Lynn County Attorney's Office opened a formal investigation within 11 days of my report. The forensic analysis of Garrett's laptop, seized under warrant, confirmed 17 document files with creation dates and author metadata consistent with the fabrication timeline I'd established. The investigator told me, during a phone call on a Wednesday afternoon, that the level of documentation I'd assembled was the most organized private citizen complaint he'd encountered in 14 years of fraud prosecution. Garrett was charged with 5 counts of forgery and 3 counts of theft by deception. Linda was charged as a co-conspirator on 4 counts. The investigation also revealed a credit card opened in my father's name, without his knowledge, carrying a balance of $14,600 in charges made exclusively by Linda over a period of 19 months. My father filed for legal separation 31 days after the birthday dinner. He moved into Richard's guest room in Omaha. The house with Linda's name on the deed, the house my mother had chosen in 1989 for its south-facing windows, was placed under a temporary asset freeze pending resolution of the fraud claims. Garrett's brokerage account was frozen by court order. The $94,000 became the centerpiece of the restitution argument. His attorney attempted to negotiate a plea: diminished capacity, family pressure, first offense. The county attorney declined. The pattern evidence was too clean, the timeline too documented, the amount too large to categorize as a misunderstanding. 6 months after the charges were filed, Linda lost the house. Not through foreclosure, through a successful legal challenge to the deed transfer itself. The original addition of her name, accomplished in 2008, was demonstrated to have been facilitated by documents misrepresenting the financial terms to my father. He had signed papers he believed were related to insurance beneficiary designations. They were not. Garrett pleaded guilty to 3 counts of forgery and 2 counts of theft by deception. He received 22 months in county custody and a restitution order of $63,400, the verified total directly attributable to his manufactured documents. Linda received a suspended sentence with 5 years of supervised probation and a separate restitution order of $19,000. Neither has made a payment as of today. Kyle, the younger son, had not participated in the fabrications. But he had known. He told me this himself. 8 weeks after the sentencing hearing, we were standing in the parking lot of a True Value hardware store on East University Avenue. I had come for shelf brackets. He had come for something I never asked about. He approached me near the entrance, hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders drawn up around his ears, the way people carry themselves when they are about to say something that has been sitting in their chest for months. He said, "I saw Garrett making one of those invoices. In 2020, on his laptop in the kitchen. I was getting water." He closed the screen fast. He looked at the pavement. I didn't say anything. I told myself it wasn't my business. He looked up. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix it." I nodded. I did not say it was fine. I did not say it was unforgivable. I said, "You were 16. He said, "I was old enough to know." We stood in that parking lot for perhaps another 30 seconds, the October air carrying the smell of dried leaves and motor oil from the adjacent auto shop. Then I went inside and bought my shelf brackets. He was gone when I came out. 3 months later, Kyle sent me a letter, handwritten on lined paper, the kind you buy in a college-ruled spiral notebook. No return address, but the postmark was Des Moines. He said he'd started seeing a therapist. He said he'd been afraid of Garrett his entire childhood and hadn't understood that was not how brothers were supposed to function until someone outside the family named it for him. He said he did not expect me to respond. I did not respond immediately. I kept the letter in my desk drawer, beside the single page with the number printed on it. My father and I speak now, every other Sunday, not warmly exactly, not the way we spoke when my mother was alive and the house was hers, and the Sunday calls were about baseball scores and whether the tomatoes had come in yet. But honestly, he has not asked me for money since the birthday dinner. He has not mentioned Linda's name in 3 conversations. What he said to me, on the phone, 4 months after moving to Omaha, his voice carrying the particular flatness of a man who has been disassembled and is attempting to rebuild without a blueprint, was this: "I let them use my voice, Danny. I knew something was off by 2020, and I told myself it was easier not to look. I let the silence hold for a long time. Then I said, 'I know. That's why I'm still answering when you call.' I bought a house, not the Sherman Hill Craftsman, that sold in 2020, to a young couple I've seen on the porch when I drive past. A different house, a 1920s bungalow on Polk Boulevard, with a screened-in back porch, wide plank floors, and a backyard large enough for a dog. The dog is a 3-year-old mutt named Herschel, Lab and something else. maybe Shepherd, who I adopted from the Animal Rescue League 6 months ago. He costs me approximately $43 a month in food and considerably more in destroyed tennis balls. The purchase price of the house was within $11,000 of the total I had sent to Linda's household across 9 years. I calculated that fact the afternoon I signed the closing documents. I did not plan it that way, but I noticed it. I notice everything. That is how I am built. Some evenings I sit on that screened porch with Herschel asleep at my feet, and the running total sits quiet in my memory, like a retired variable. $87,412. That number used to represent what was taken from me. Now it represents the distance between who I was, a man who closed browser tabs on his own future to fund fabricated emergencies, and who I am now, sitting in a house I chose, on a porch I maintain, beside a dog who asks nothing of me except presence and consistency. I think about what accumulation really means, not financially. I understand that part with technical precision, but structurally, how a family can operate like a failing system for years, decades, without anyone filing the claim, because each individual loss falls below the reporting threshold. How the people inside the system learn to say, "It's just $11, and it's just this once, and he's your brother," until the aggregate becomes something no single human being could absorb if they ever saw it written on one page. The numbers don't argue. They don't need to be interpreted. They don't require belief. They simply are, complete and honest, and laid flat on a table where everyone in the room can read them at the same time. I know now that writing it on one page is the act that breaks the cycle. Not anger, not confrontation, not even courage necessarily, just the willingness to total the column instead of looking at each line item separately, the way the system trained you to. Because a system that survives on extraction depends, absolutely depends, on no one ever doing the math. If you sat down tonight and totaled everything you've given to the people who call you family, not in love, but in obligation, not in generosity, but in manufactured emergency, not in free choice, but in emotional pressure applied so precisely you mistook it for your own idea, what would the number be? And if you printed that number on a single page, centered, alone, would you recognize it as the price of something you freely chose? Or would you recognize it, finally, as a debt you never agreed to carry? This story is a fictional narrative created for entertainment, education, and dramatic reflection. We hope it reminded you that your dignity is not negotiable, and that setting a boundary, even a painful one, can be an act of love for yourself and everyone the pattern would have reached next.